Hi, my name is Laura Abbott, and I'm going to be your presenter for home-based training for seniors. There's my lovely picture, just to put a face with the voice, and just some information about my background. I'm a massage therapist, and although I teach at Georgia State, I have worked out in the field for 25 years, and I love working with seniors. They're just fun. So I hope that you will enjoy this presentation as much as I do. And this particular slide will show up at the end of your webinar, so don't feel like you have to write all this down just yet. But when you're done, you will be able to get your certificates immediately. If you're not near a printer, you can save the certificate after following these steps and print it off later. And what you'll do is finish the webinar, of course. Then you'll log on to the Exercise Etc. website. You will then click on Administration. Then you'll go to the link for Webinar On Demand certificates. You'll complete all the required fields, and you want to make sure that you put your name on there the way that you want to see it on the certificate. Your certificate will appear on the screen, and you can either save it or print it at that point. So if you're not near a printer, you can just save it to your computer and print it later. And one big important thing, just to remind you here, is the WebEx program records when you log on and when you log off. So if you log off early or fast forward through the presentation, then you may not get your continuing ed credit. So you want to make sure to listen to the whole program, and hopefully I will make this as enjoyable as possible for you. So why home-based exercise? I'm assuming that you have chosen this webinar because you enjoy or want to start working with seniors. Home-based exercises for your seniors are great because it's convenient for the client. And we all know that whenever something is convenient, people will most likely stick with it. It also provides a little bit of privacy for the person. And this can be motivating for really for anyone, not just for seniors, but for anyone. If they're intimidated by gyms, if they feel uncomfortable with how they look, body image issues, physical limitations, any of these things can be intimidating for someone to go to a gym or to a workout facility. So if you work with your seniors in their home, then they may feel a little bit more comfortable with it, and that, of course, is going to help motivate them, which will also in turn help them stick with the program. And of course, when you have that adherence plus the motivation, you're going to get better results. And another reason that actually isn't up here on the slide is your seniors may have certain things in their home that they have trouble doing, and you can better assess that and help come up with exercises that will help them improve that right there in their own home, so that they can learn how to maneuver or adjust or whatever they need to do in order to be able to function better in their own home. Now, the nice thing for you as the trainer is you have less overhead because you're not having to pay rent. It's going to help you with better profits. It may help you work with some of those clients that need your help but maybe can't afford it, or they're on a limited income. So you might be able to work with your prices a little bit because you're not paying for all this overhead that you would if you were at a gym or a facility. So how old is old? I don't know if I like these numbers right here, but typically you can read these numbers here yourself, but it gives you an age group. Your 45 to 64-year-olds are your middle age. 65 to 74 is a younger old. 75 to 84 is considered old. 85 to 94 is old, and 95 plus is the oldest of the old. And this is from the American Society of Gerontologists. The thing that we do have to remember, though, is just because the number says that they're old or in one of these other categories doesn't mean that they function as an old person. So we do still need to look at the individual and assess them individually. I've seen some very, very fit 74-year-olds, 75-year-olds. I've seen some very, very unfit 20-year-olds. So even though by number they kind of fit into a category, it doesn't necessarily mean that physically or physiologically they fall into that same category. So as far as your recommendations go, and this is following World Health Organization, this is following American College of Sports Medicine, the challenge with some of your seniors is they think that because they're getting older that they need to slow down. And slowing down is not necessarily the right thing for them to do. They still need to try to get 150 minutes of exercise at moderate intensity or 75 minutes of high intensity. And this is per week. This is pretty much the same guidelines and recommendations for any age group by American College of Sports Medicine. They also should get 300 minutes of moderate intensity or 150 minutes of high intensity of cardio per week. We have found that these numbers are more associated with better health, lower rates of depression, and we do know that exercise does help slow down cognitive decline. Study after study after study has shown this. So even those that have mild to moderate dementia can still follow instructions. They can still exercise. They can physiologically and physically function. And this may help slow down the mental decline, kind of get rid of those cobwebs. Also, too, seniors who present a fall risk to do some kind of balance training. That balance training needs, of course, needs to be safe training, and they need to do this 3 times a week. Really, we can all benefit from that, you know, not just your seniors, but a lot of times what happens is your seniors begin to lose a little bit of function, probably because they have slowed down because they thought it was okay to do that. They do the things that they're comfortable with, and they avoid the things that they are uncomfortable with. And typically the things that we are uncomfortable doing are things that we need to do, which is why we're uncomfortable with it, because we've been avoiding it. So balance may be a scary thing for them to do by themselves, which, you know, understandable, but we do want to make sure that we incorporate some kind of balance training for our clients so that they do feel more comfortable doing the things that they want to do in their daily tasks. They still need to strength train. Strength training has lots of benefits. We know that it helps to build up muscle mass, and muscle mass is something that we're losing as we age. And we lose muscle mass at a rate of about 10% per year once we hit our 20s and 30s. So if they aren't doing any kind of strength training, especially your females, then they're just going to end up not being able to take care of themselves. And if they can't take care of themselves, they're going to end up in assisted living. And, you know, that's not a good thing if they don't need to be there. So, you know, let's prevent that by getting them involved in strength training at least twice per week. And then your frail or impaired senior should exercise for 10 minutes at a time as frequently as possible. So, you know, this kind of goes into ACSM used to be real big on, years ago, used to be real big on continuous exercise for a length of time. And what we're finding is that if you have to break it up into bits and pieces, that still provides benefits. So if you have your frail or impaired seniors that just for whatever reason don't have the stamina to do 30 minutes of continuous exercise, then 10 minutes is good. Certainly better than doing nothing. So we want to try to incorporate this as appropriate for our clients because we know that they are going to benefit from it. Now, the number one goal of our program is to try to reduce injuries, you know, as far as during training and also out in the real world. So we've got to get some proper assessments and screening. This will help us figure out what we need to do, what we need to modify, whether we need to get a medical clearance. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with the risk stratification process of determining whether someone needs medical clearance before they exercise. And we do want to follow that, especially with seniors, just because they're at a greater risk of having other health problems. We also want to make sure that they're seeing the right people. I can't tell you how many times years ago when I worked in a hospital-based wellness center that people would get confused with our facility as opposed to cardiac rehab. And we'd have to get that clarified just to make sure that they were in the right place. And 9 times out of 10, some of them needed to be in in cardiac rehab where they're monitored with an EKG and they have nurses present and, all this other kind of stuff. So we do want to make sure that even though their doctor may be saying, we want you to exercise, they need to be in the right place. So that's one thing that's going to help us with this screening and assessment and determining the need for physician release. We also want to have some assessment provided by the doctor on their heart health. The challenge with people who have heart problems is the average number of comorbidities that they have, which is other diseases that can shorten their lifespan. Typically, your cardiac rehab patient has anywhere between 3 to 5 other problems. And this can be high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and cardiac problems tend to run hand in hand with each other. Stroke risk. I mean, all of these things we need to be aware of because it's not just a matter of getting them up and moving. It's also trying to promote a healthy life. And this may come through education of maybe smoking cessation, how to take better care of yourself if you have diabetes, how to eat healthier. And of course, we're limited. If you're a fitness professional, we are limited in the information we can give on the nutrition, but we can certainly refer them to a registered licensed dietitian if necessary. So we do want to make sure that the old ticker is working like it should, and if there are some issues with it, what are those issues? And again, are they in the right place? Are they seeing the right person, or do they need to be in cardiac rehab? We also want to understand the orthopedic issues. A lot of times there are lots of things and lots of great ideas that we have for an exercise program for a client that we want them to do, and then once we try to get them to do it, maybe they're unable to. So you've got to come up with another exercise immediately, and that can be challenging. So, but if we know that if they've had knee replacements, hip replacements, when have they had those? Are they still under limitations because it's been within a year since they've had that joint replacement? Do they have arthritis? Because what's normal for one person may need to be modified for somebody else. So we do want to understand their orthopedic history and their orthopedic limitations. Determining their baselines is the next thing, and we do that pretty much with anyone when we start an exercise program for them. The challenge here is your traditional type fitness evaluations may not be the best way to assess a baseline for your client. Instead of looking at cardiovascular fitness levels and VO2 estimates and flexibility by doing the sit and reach and body composition and things like that, that may kind of go out the window as far as some of your seniors. And you may need to do balance testing with your seniors or functional testing with your seniors. And there's a lot of tests out there and recommendations that you can do for that. So the assessment and the baseline is the foundation of the program, but we want to make sure that we're performing the right types of assessments to get those baselines. And also, too, as far as assessing and screening, it tells the trainer, as far as valuable information for the program design. It lets you know what modifications you need to make. If you've got the client who has osteoporosis and arthritis, well, it tells you that you got to find a nice little combination of weight-bearing versus non-weight-bearing. You don't want to aggravate the joints and inflame the joints by doing a lot of weight-bearing exercises, but at the same time, you need to do some weight-bearing exercises of some sort in order to help their bone density. So you've got to figure out this compromise. Also, it lets the trainer know who's going to be ready for more intense training. Like I said, not every senior is frail and limited. Some of them, I've seen 70-year-olds run marathons. So it just depends on the individual, and this information that we're looking for is going to help us with that. And then because of the baseline, we can reassess them later. Because of the health history questionnaire, we can also reassess their health later. Maybe their cholesterol's come down, maybe their blood pressure's come down. I've seen elderly get off of their blood pressure medication because they started exercising. These are all great things to show their progress and help keep them motivated like it would with anybody else. And then depending on how you score on the assessment or how the client scores on their assessment, you can use these numbers to give guidance as far as how much resistance needs to be used on certain exercises and what the progression for even strength training could be. So we always want everyone to warm up. I know you guys know that. So we typically want to do some kind of a dynamic warm up, and your seniors are no different. Their warm up may take a little bit longer, especially if they have some physiological issues going on. Just because their body is not working as efficiently, it may take a little longer to get that warm up to reach the goals that we're trying to reach. So of course, with any warm up for anyone, we want to elevate the body core temperature a little bit. We want to elongate muscles so that they're prepared for the exercise that they're getting ready to do. We need to activate the neuromuscular system. Oops, that was a system. I guess we just need one of those. But this is to get the nerves that tell the muscles what to do, get them going so that they can alert the muscles when they need to change a movement or, whatever it is that they're trying to do. And this may take a little bit longer in some of your seniors because they lose a little bit of this. Everybody loses a little bit as we get older. And again, that's why we might need to have the warm-up last maybe instead of 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes for your seniors. And then, of course, like with anyone, we want to prepare the body for the movement and the intensity that they're going to be using for their exercise program. So we want the dynamic warm-up to kind of mimic the activity. So if they're doing a chair exercise class, do some easy marching, some easy arm and shoulder movements, some ankle movements, just kind of get everything warmed up, ready to go. If they're going to walk for their exercise, just have them do some nice casual walking just to warm up, kind of swing the arms around, get those arms moving. Whatever it is that they're going to be doing for their exercise, we want that to mimic the warm-up. So some other things to help you design that dynamic warm-up. Like we mentioned, I guess I got ahead of myself a little bit here, but we're looking at a 5 to 15-minute duration. Your beginners are probably going to need a little bit longer. We want it to be low to moderate intensity. We want to keep it less than 60% of their heart rate reserve. And if you remember your Carbonin formula, that formula that's 220 minus their age, minus their resting heart rate, and then multiply by the intensity that you want them to exercise or warm up, and then add their heart rate back in, their resting heart rate back in, then that gives you their heart rate as far as their exercise intensity goes. The heart rate reserve part is the 220 minus their age minus the resting heart rate. So what we're saying here is take that part of the formula, multiply it by maybe 50% or 40%, depending on the person, and that's where their heart rate should start to creep up towards during the warm-up, because we don't want to wear them out during the warm-up, so we want to keep that kind of light and easy. It should result in a little bit of perspiration. Of course, if you're in the South, which is where I'm from, it is glistening if you're dealing with your ladies, but we do want to get the muscles warmed up a little bit, so they should start perspiring a little bit during the warm-up. Movement patterns need to be concise, especially with your more frail older adults. One of the keys with our older adults is we need to make sure that we're using good cues. We use the same cues for the same movements over and over, and that we keep it simple, especially for the warm-up, especially for your beginners. So keep your movements simple. Keep them small changes in the movement. So you're not doing drastic changes all at once for upper body and lower body. For example, when I taught chair exercise classes, if I had both the arms and the legs going at one time and I was getting ready to transition into another move, I would usually relax the arms, have them bring their arms back down, change the legs, make sure they have the leg movement down or the new leg movement down, and then add a new arm movement. So it's kind of doing it legs first and then arms. Or just always bring them back to that marching. So make sure that you keep everything concise. Active range of movement and alignment are very, very important. It's important for everyone, but it's very important for your older adults just because they may have those orthopedic conditions that's changed their posture or the muscular issues that have changed their posture. And we may need to re-educate those muscles, and that involves reminding them over and over, keep your back straight, relax your shoulders, whatever cue that you need to give your client to make sure that they are keeping proper form even during the warm-up. And make sure the movements are performed in static position before introducing the dynamic activity. And again, this just helps to get their body familiar with the movement and also feel like they can accomplish this movement. You don't want to make the warm-up so challenging that they feel like, gosh, I can't even get the warm-up movements going. How am I going to do during the exercise portion? But at the same time, you don't want to keep it so boring that they don't want to come back either. So make it the warm-up. Try not to make the movements challenging just yet. This is just a warm-up. That's all we're trying to do for them. So this is just an example of some ideas that you can come up with for your client. This is a 6-minute dynamic warm-up, starting off with some arm pendulums, arm circles, just to get the shoulders warmed up. Do that for maybe 60 seconds. And because it's a warm-up, we're doing light to moderate intensity. There's no rest that's needed at this point. Then next, you can have them balance on a chair up against a wall and have them do the same thing with their legs, just making leg circles with each leg for 60 seconds. Then, and this is going from something static to something dynamic, now we're just going to get them to march in place for about 60 seconds. Then you can get the hamstrings warmed up a little bit by doing some butt kicks, just flexing the knees and pretending like they're trying to kick themselves in the rear end. Then you can get them to do some ball squeezes while they're walking for 60 seconds, and then progress them up to some speed walking. So this is a nice little progression where you're going from static to dynamic to something a little bit faster, just to get that whole process of the warm-up and warming up the body and getting the heart rate up and getting the breathing to increase a little bit so that they can get prepared for that exercise that they're getting ready to do. So pictures. We love pictures. So here are your arm and leg pendulums. And it's cute because I see, people in the gym, especially your old school individuals, which is fine, but I'll see them doing their little arm circles and before they get ready to walk on the treadmill. And it's a great little warm-up for your shoulders, for your upper back, your chest, just to kind of get everything warmed up and moving a little bit. And then in this case, he's doing some leg swings, and that's fun. In fact, it was interesting. I was reading some articles on runners and warm-ups, and you see young runners in college age, all kinds of different levels where they do the high knees as they walk in order to warm themselves up. It's a great way to warm up. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a great way for your seniors to kind of get those hips moving a little bit. And then march in place, and he looks like he's just hanging out here doing a march here, getting intense, but, just a light, moderate march going from static to dynamic, and then just warming up those hamstrings, just doing some butt kicks is the next one, and each one of these you can do for maybe 60 seconds or a little longer if you want to. And then a ball squeeze while walking. I bet some of y'all thought we were talking about putting the ball between your knees, but we're just saying, hey, let's hold an exercise ball, just squeeze it while you're walking. Now we're engaging core a little bit, just getting the whole body warmed up. And then just get them to do some speed walking, again, for maybe 60 seconds, as fast as possible for them, because it's not a workout, it's just a warm-up. So now that we've got them warmed up, trying to get an exercise complex set up. A complex helps to incorporate consecutive sets, a variety of exercises designed to target multiple aspects of conditioning. So we're trying to get a variety of exercises in to work a variety of muscles because that's typically how we function in our daily activities. And with some of your seniors, their exercise program is most likely not about losing weight, not trying to look good in the bikini in the summertime. You know, not trying to get the six-pack abs like maybe some of your other clients. It's possibly just to be able to function. So the more that we can get these exercises to incorporate and mimic their daily activities, then the better off and more motivated they're going to be. The exercises need to complement each other and progressively fatigue the whole body. Now, when we say fatigue, we want them to feel tired. We want their muscles to be tired, but we don't want them to lose their form. And that's very important. That's true with everybody. If you have someone who's starting to lose their form because they are becoming tired, that's when you need to stop. And that's when, with some of your seniors possibly, depending on their conditioning, they may need to do those little 10-minute increments and regain their strength, regain their breath, whatever the situation is, and then get them going again. The intensity can be determined by time. It can be determined by effort or one rep max workload. So if you're dealing with strength training, and here's the catch here, repetition maximum. Notice we didn't say one repetition maximum. Many of your seniors, and some of your young people too, do not need to be doing one repetition maxes. Now, we're not saying that one rep maxes are bad for everyone, but on the flip side, we're saying that they're not good for everyone. We have to remember that any restrictions that the doctor may give us, we need to incorporate those into their program. So if, for example, if they have high blood pressure, we don't need to be doing one rep maxes with them, because when you do a one rep max, you're pretty much doing a Valsalva maneuver. You're hitting that sticking point. That's why it's a one rep max. Your hypertensives don't need to do that. Your people with arthritis don't need to do that. Your beginners who are not familiar with the exercise don't need to do that. So usually your better way to find your intensity when you're dealing with strength training or trying to figure out workloads is to find out however many number of repetitions you want the client to do and see what weight will get them to the point where they can do those number of repetitions and feel fatigued, but still maintain their form. So keep that in mind. We need to make sure that we don't just say, oh, repetition maximum workload, let's do that on my client, and not thinking necessarily about what's going on with their health, that maybe that would be a good idea. And then rest can be active or passive. So active rest could be marching in place, some of the other little things that we were talking about earlier, the arm circles, the leg pendulums, things like that. Or it can be a, you know, I'm going to sit down in between my sets or my exercises and rest. It just depends on the client and what their abilities are. Now, agility training. This is important. Of course, you know, look at this lady right here. She's cranking out some running speeds here, and that may be some of your clients. But when it comes to agility, it's very important that we continue to incorporate these into our programs for our seniors as well as our younger population. Your beginners may need to use close skills, and these are drills that involve where the athlete knows what the outcome of the drill is. It's a pre-planned exercise. So what we're saying here is, for example, you tell your client you're going to walk this far and you're going to take a left turn where that cone is. And you're going to turn left and you're going to walk this many steps, and there's another cone and you're going to turn right. So they know ahead of time that they have some turns coming up, and they know when those turns are going to be coming. So it's no surprise to them. Your intermediate and advanced individuals may want to use open skills. And open skills means that the client doesn't know when you may change something. So your client may be walking and you tell them, when I blow the whistle, you got to turn right. But they don't know when it's going to happen. So these are things that can help enhance the unknown that happens out in the real world. You've got crowds when people are walking on the streets, and sometimes your clients may say, yes, I love to get out and go to the theater or go to the museum or go to the park, but I don't do it anymore. And it may be that they're afraid of crowds and getting bumped and falling down. So this is where when you get information on your client, this kind of goes back to the assessment. It's not just about their health, it's also about their ability. What do you enjoy doing that you're not able to do anymore? And that can help you find out some really good information as far as planning their program. And if they need to start with the closed skills or start with the open skills and try and get them back into life again. So your agility complex, and again, we are trying to incorporate in that complex a variety of exercises that works a variety of muscles. So these are some ideas that you can have to put together for your program, and one of them is going to be walking the ladder, and we've got some pictures coming up here in just a little bit. Walking the ladder for 60 seconds, but then let them rest for 30 seconds. And again, this rest can either be active or passive, depending on the needs of the client. The whistle drill walking, lateral walking of the ladder, stairs, march the ladder, the dot drills. These are all some things that you can incorporate, and you know, these are basically what we're doing. You can get these ladders, and if you don't have a ladder, you can use masking tape or painter's tape and put it on the ground or on the carpet if you want to, and just have them step through the ladder like they normally would. Then you can have the whistle drill, and this can be, this is an open skill. So when the whistle blows, they walk 5 to 10 yards as quickly as possible. Just kind of like red light, green light when you're a kid. When the whistle blows again, they have to stop as quickly as possible. This is going to help them out in crowds. You know, times when you're walking behind somebody and the person suddenly stops and you don't want to run into them, but you also don't want to stop so quickly that you end up falling. And this is a fear of some of your clients. So the trainer also will point out different directions, different drill repeats. These are some things that you can add in safely for your client. Your lateral walk. Your gluteus medius and minimus, your IT band, your tensor fascia lati, these muscles on the lateral side or the outside of your leg, if they become weak, then it can affect the ability of the person to balance on one foot at a time, to step in different directions, again, referring back to crowds again. You know, if they need to walk around somebody or walk around a hole, you know, all kinds of different things that will cause a person in real life to have to change directions, but they're weak in this area, this may be a challenge for them. So the lateral walk, still using this ladder, just having them step, lift one foot and step over into the next section of the ladder, and that helps them work on these muscles. You want to make sure that your participants can perform the reps at the same time with these exercises if you are working with a group of people. So, you know, making sure that it's safe. If you need to support someone or keep an eye on a particular person, you want to keep that in mind as well when you're working with your groups of individuals. And then your stair whistle drill. And this is one that you also want to be careful with your client. And this is where the assessment comes in handy. When the whistle blows, they kind of climb the stairs as quickly as possible. When the whistle blows again, they stop as quickly as possible. Now, this is for more advanced clients because, of course, we don't want anybody falling down the stairs. But one of the things that going down the stairs helps is eccentric contractions of their leg muscles, especially the quadricep muscles. And oftentimes, young or old, you may have individuals who are great at lifting weight, but they're not very strong lowering the weight. And this can be an issue, not just going up and down the stairs for your client, but even stepping off of curbs, walking downhill. You know, these are things that they may avoid doing in real life, which may lead you to think, and you can find this out with your assessments, are they weak on the eccentric contractions of these muscles? Because that's what you're using when you're walking downhill or stepping off curbs or walking down steps. And the nice thing, too, is this is functional for your client in their own home. This is something that you could do with them on their stairs. And it may be a concern or a question, as we mentioned earlier, asking your client, What are things that you want to be able to do that you're not able to do now? And a lot of times you'll hear your seniors say going up and down stairs. So we need to be careful with the knees. We need to be careful with those that have arthritis. But if we incorporate, and some of you may be familiar with step aerobic mechanics, stepping up the steps with the whole foot, making sure that the knee still stays over the toes, or above the toes. It's not going in front of the toes, just like you would in a step aerobics class. Stepping down properly, stepping down on the ball of the foot and then rolling to the heel, because unlike in step aerobics, they're stepping forward. Usually in step aerobics, we step backwards off the step, but they're stepping forward down a step. So if they are weak in this, it could be an eccentric contraction issue with the quadriceps, and that's something that we need to try to correct through other types of exercises. And then marching the ladder, getting those knees up. This is going to help them work on balance issues, being able to stand on one foot. One of the things that may be helpful to do with your seniors in that assessment is watch them walking and moving when they don't realize that you're watching them, so that you can get a good, true assessment of their abilities or different abilities. And if you have a client that tends to lower their center of gravity, flatten the back, flex at the knees, and shuffle their feet, then they may have a balance issue. So if they do, you want to be careful marching the ladder with groups if you have one or two people that have balance issues, because you want to keep an eye on them. But this is something that can help them balance on one foot, because when we walk, that's what we have to do. And if they feel like they're losing that balance, they will start shuffling their feet. So this is a great assessment tool that you can use on your client to find out whether it's appropriate for them to try this exercise in a group, or if it's something that maybe you need to work with them one-on-one in order to provide them some support. When you're incorporating this agility complex, you want to mix the intervals, help be creative, mix up the exercises some. It doesn't always have to be 60 seconds and then rest for 30 seconds. You can mix it up a little bit depending on their endurance abilities and their physical abilities. So the options are plentiful for recreation, for body composition work, because they're helping to work on these muscles. You want to consider the energy systems that are being used. Typically we don't use our phosphagen system that much in our daily activities, which is where you're pushing it hard for 10 seconds and then resting for a period of time. We tend to use more of our glycogen phase, which is where you may be pushing it harder for 1 to 2 minutes and then resting for a period of time. So that's something else to consider with your client when we go back looking at this recommendation for the time as far as the recommendations for the rest. So you're not set for 60 seconds for the exercise and 30 seconds for the rest. You can mix this up a little bit and play around with it and mix up the exercises. Now, looking at the dot drill, and you can purchase the little dots. You can use paper plates, but you have to be careful with those. Make sure that they don't slide with the person. It just depends on, again, on what their ability is. But this is a great drill for a warm-up routine and to get the agility work done at the same time. And you would want to complete 6 rounds of the following drills. And I'll go over this a couple of times in case you're writing this down. The first part is the up and back. And what you're going to do is start with your feet on A and B. You'll jump quickly with both feet to C. So they have their feet on both A and B, and then they jump up and land with both feet on C. Then they're going to split their feet to D and E. It's almost like doing a moving jumping jack. So they're going to do that, and then they're going to come back the same way without turning around. So they're going forward, 1 foot on A, 1 foot on B. They jump up, both feet land on C. Then they jump up, 1 foot lands on E, the other foot lands on D. And then they do it again backwards. So lots of balance. Again, make sure that this is appropriate for your client. And then want to repeat this 5 times for the up and back drill. Now the second round is the right foot. It's called right foot. And after doing the up and back, your feet should be on A and B, back to the starting point. So now you're going to jump to C with only your right foot landing on C. Use only the right foot to go in order from D to E to C to A and then to B. So they're hopping on their right foot, going from D to E and then back to C and then back to A and B. And they're going to repeat this 5 times. Then the next one is you're going to do the left foot. So same thing as the right foot drill. The right foot drill ends with the right foot on B. So now you're going to go to C with your left foot and repeat that same pattern. So you're going to go from B on the right foot to C on the left foot. And only using the left foot, you're going to go from D to E to C to A and then back to B. And you're going to repeat that 5 times. Then the next one, which is called both feet. The left foot drill ends with the left foot on B. So now you're going to go to C with both feet and then repeat the same pattern as the previous drill, but this time you're doing it with both feet. So both feet go from C, and then both feet go to D, then both to E, then to C, then to A, and then to B. And you're going to repeat that 5 times. So with the right foot, left foot, both feet, you're following the same pattern. It's just you're doing it all on the right foot 5 times. Then you switch and do it all on the left foot 5 times. And then you're going to do it with both feet at the same time and repeat that 5 times. Now, then your 5th step is called the turnaround. The both feet drill ends with both feet on B. So now you're going to go to C with both feet, then go to D and E with a split, and quickly jump and turn 180 degrees to the right and face the other way, but your feet are still on D and E. You just did a 180-degree turn with a jump. Then you're going to jump to C with both feet, and then A and B with split feet. Then you're going to turn again quickly, spinning 180 degrees to the left, and split feet are still going to be on A and B. And you're going to repeat that 5 times. So that's just a fun little exercise for them. Again, you know, you want to make sure it's appropriate, a little high impact because you're doing some jumping. You want to make sure it's appropriate for your client. So this is probably, you know, more of an advanced exercise for some of your clients. Now, the resisted walking complex, using monster bands or tubing or whatever you would like to use, you're going to have 7 sets, actually 6 sets with a repeat. You're going to do a fast walk forward with the band, and as you can see in the picture, the gentleman's walking forward. You, the trainer, fitness professional, are holding it still. So they're going to walk forward fast with band resistance. They're going to walk back fast. Then they'll do, and this can be challenging because the band is trying to pull them back faster than maybe they want to go. So this is helping to work on some eccentric contractions. Then you're going to do a side shuffle to the left, a side shuffle to the right, a grapevine to the left, and a grapevine to the right. And then you repeat all of this. So that's a nice little exercise. Again, you can mix up the intervals. You can play around with the times that you do on this. You can play around with the band resistance. So, you know, all kinds of things that you can help to make this a little bit, have a little bit of variety with this. And then also, too, the monster band complex. This is working on some muscle groups here. So down here at the bottom, your rest is active. So they can jog or walk or some other activity during the rest interval. So you want to keep it active. So this is going to be possibly a more advanced exercise for some of your clients. But the mixed intervals, this allows you to be creative. So the options are very plentiful for recreation and body composition work. And again, just like in the other mixed complex intervals, you want to consider the energy system and the demands of the client, what their goals are. So, you know, maybe keeping it in that glycogen phase, not necessarily the aerobic phase where it takes 3 minutes or longer, because, you know, we're looking at doing 8 to 12 repetitions here. So they should be able to finish that in 60 seconds. So this is helping to work on that glycogen phase. So let's look at some of these exercises in this complex. You've got your bent over row. You can make this as hard or as easy as it needs to be for your client. You want to make sure your client has some good core strength in order to hold this nice position and, watch their form. But the further apart the feet are, of course, the harder the resistance. The lighter color monster band, the lighter the resistance. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of mix this up. Now, the key on this, and this is going to be important for your clients, is we don't want to make this just a tricep exercise. We want to make this a traps and rhomboid exercise. So you got to make sure that their scapula are moving towards the spine as they bring their elbows up. Okay, so I guess I should have drawn those arrows on this side here. So it's about the scapula. There are other exercises that are going to work the biceps and the triceps here. We want to work on the upper back muscle, those traps and rhomboids. So make sure that you're using proper cues to let your person know, squeeze the shoulder blades together, pinch the shoulder blades together. Sometimes, of course, asking the client if it's okay, I'll put my fingers along the spine and tell them, squeeze my fingers with your scapula. Whatever cue is going to work for your client to ensure that this is a traps and rhomboid exercise and not just pulling the elbows back and working triceps and flexing the elbow with biceps. Your high pull exercise, again, making sure that they can keep their form, so good core strength. This is for your more advanced senior. They can make this as challenging as they want by twisting right here the monster band and making sure that they're lifting with their legs, with their quads, with their glutes, not with their back so much. So they need to engage the quads and the glutes first before they start to engage the back muscles to stand up straight. They don't want to lift the elbows up any higher than shoulder level. That's going to be true with everyone. Just like if you're doing upright rows, you don't want to lift the elbows up higher than the shoulders because that'll start to create some impingement problems with the shoulders. So just bringing the elbows maybe even with the shoulders, maybe even a little bit lower, and adding the appropriate band for the appropriate resistance for them. And of course, keeping the feet about shoulder width apart is going to help mimic more of the squatting exercise. Typically, when you start to bring the feet in together, it makes it a little bit more challenging for the individual, and their form may be compromised. So make sure that they have their feet about shoulder width apart. The chest press. This one can be challenging. If the band tends to irritate them by having it along the back, then you can put a towel there or something for them. But the nice thing about the monster band is you can have it spread apart a little bit on the back where it'll stay in place a little bit better. Plus, it's flat, so it'll stay in place a lot better than if you were using a TheraBand. But basically, just have them bring the monster band behind them, and they're just going to push forward just like they would with the chest press. You can have them do it seated, but the nice thing that with standing is it makes it weight-bearing. So you've got those individuals that maybe need to be concerned about bone density. You also make it more functional by having them stand, because when you push a door close or if you're pushing a grocery cart, you're not normally sitting in a chair when you're doing it. You're standing. So that's why it's nice to be able to make this a standing exercise. So keep that in mind as well, and make it as appropriate for your client. But nice, simple little exercise. They do want to keep, and he's bending his wrist a little bit in this picture. You do want to try to keep the wrist straight because you don't want to irritate forearm muscles for an exercise that's really working those larger pec muscles. So keep the wrist nice and straight. Push the elbows forward, keeping the arms at shoulder level or maybe just a little bit below. Sometimes lowering the shoulder or lowering the arms below shoulder level just a smidgen might be just enough to help make it more comfortable on shoulder problems. Maintain their posture throughout the movement, and this will also help them work on their balance by doing it standing. And then, of course, your squats. These are basically the same as you would incorporate with any of your clients doing any kind of squat exercise. Feet are shoulder width apart. You want to make sure that they engage the quads and the glutes, and then use the back and the core muscles for stability. They want to sit back, and this can be kind of scary for some of your individuals, so you may even want to place a chair behind them just to make sure, just if anything, to help them feel comfortable with the exercise. Not that they're going to need it, but sometimes just knowing that it's back there is good. Feet can be turned outward by about 15 degrees, which is typically normal as far as foot positioning goes, but they've really got to maintain that core. And so very important that you have your proper cues for that exercise. And then deadlifts. Sometimes people hear the word deadlifts and they're thinking, oh, that's a bad exercise, but we're modifying it. We're not doing the deadlifts that some of your bodybuilders may be doing. So we're not going all the way down. We're keeping the arms in alignment. They aren't in front like you would be if you're grabbing a bar. We want to make sure that the knees go over or stay above the toes and not go in front of the toes. We want to make sure that they are keeping their core strength, so that's something to watch for as far as fatigue goes. And all they do is just stand back up. So in this particular situation, this gentleman's only lowering his hands down to about knee height, which is fine. That's a modified deadlift for them. But people get scared about doing deadlifts with some of their clients or modified deadlifts, and the thing is that we use this in our daily activities. We'd rather be able to show our clients how to do it correctly and how to do it safely so that they don't injure themselves doing it in a daily activity. But of course, you know, your client's got to be ready for this exercise. Now for your core stability complex, looking at your transverse your transverse abdominal muscle, which doesn't really have any function as far as movement. You do want to keep that strong because we do tend to lose that, as you know, especially any other muscle tone. We do lose that as we get older, but the abs seem to go first because we get lazy in how we sit. Some of y'all may be sitting, leaning back in your chair, which is not activating core. And we do tend to compromise our core strength a lot, even as we get older. So transverse abdominis, if you see TVA, that's what we're talking about here. Vertical toss exercises, your rotational toss. Rotation is not necessarily a bad thing. We do it in our daily activities. We just need to teach people how to do it correctly. Your front slams, your side-to-side slams, and your squat toss. And again, looking at the time and looking at the reps. Play around with this with your client and just see what they're able to do and mix up the exercises some. So your transverse abdominis activator, this is a really good exercise. You just have your client start in a seated position, and they can progress to standing in this activity, but and then you can add some instability to it. But basically what they're doing is they're sitting nice and tall, feet flat on the floor with their arms out in front of them pressed together. And they can either just press their hands together and activate the transverse abdominis muscle, or you can actually push against their hands and they're trying to resist that movement, and that will also activate that transverse abdominis. So your client is in this position, and you, the trainer, are just adding some gentle resistance. You're not trying to knock them over. You're just trying to add some gentle resistance with the arms in the horizontal plane, and the client's just trying to resist this movement. Now, you can push to the left gently. You can push or try to push your client's hands to the right. You can push down on top of your client's arms. You can push up a little bit. And again, keep in mind any shoulder or elbow or wrist issues that they may be having, but it's a gentle push. And this will help activate that transverse abdominis as well as some other core muscles. Your vertical toss or your toss with rotation, you know, again, this is trying to incorporate multiple movements. You're getting into a squat position. You're using your upper body. You're maintaining core as you're performing this activity. So they're basically just tossing a medicine ball. You can start them off with just a light air-filled type ball from the beginning and then add a medicine ball. You can progress them to the point where now they're adding a little bit of rotation. And the key here is to let the hips move just a tad, but you're keeping the core in good alignment. So what should be happening is the heel, as they rotate it, I guess this is rotating to this guy's left, the left heel may come up a little bit, which is fine, in order to keep the hips in alignment. And just have them toss the ball. They can hit it up against the wall. They can toss it to somebody that's standing next to them. But keeping that alignment is very, very important. So allowing this knee to bend a little bit, let that heel lift up a little bit in order to keep the hips in good alignment is teaching them how to properly rotate. And of course, they're going to do their set number of repetitions or the length of time that you want them to do on one side, and then they'll switch and do the other side. Your front slams, again, you can use your medicine balls for this, and all they're doing is forcefully throwing something down to the floor, and typically it'll bounce up a little bit. Even your medicine balls will bounce up a little bit. But the key here, and notice in this picture on the right, he is still maintaining that core strength. He still has his knees flexed a little bit. He's still got his feet about shoulder width apart. And this will also help incorporate some good shoulder deceleration type movements. So want to maintain that form. And again, you're going to go for your length of time that you want to and play around with that time and that rest. And then your side-to-side slams, again, same thing as progressing from the rotational toss to the front slam to now the side-to-side slam. So notice here in his rotation, he's got this knee bent a little bit. This heel's going to come up just a tad. He's keeping his hips in nice alignment, and he's just slamming the ball down and then rotating to the other side, slamming the ball down. So the side that he's rotating to, the back leg, the knee's going to bend a little bit, and that's fine. That's what you want it to do. If you watch any baseball player, when they're at bat, they bend that back leg and lift that heel. You know, that's going to help keep them in proper alignment. Sometimes your seniors, especially the ones with balance issues, are a little nervous about doing this because it's shifting the weight that's on that one leg to the balls of the feet, and that's a smaller surface area, so that may be a challenge for them. So what they end up doing instead is keeping both feet flat on the floor and rotating, putting pressure on the knee joint. We don't want them to do that. So we want to get them in the habit of bending that back leg and lifting that heel up a little bit if they can. And maybe your progression with your client is to start them off just doing the movement without having them slam a ball down. And just see if they can do that movement from side to side and feel like they're able to keep their balance. And then your squat toss. Wow, what a great exercise. You know, and again, using different weighted balls. You know, again, it can be a very lightweight ball, but now you're combining upper and lower body here. So your person in this first picture is in a good squat position. So this is where you can assess to see if you can progress your client and from just doing a squat into adding a toss to this. They're going to stand up and they're going to throw the ball. You can see his heels are coming up a little bit off the floor. Good calf activator exercise, because sometimes some of our activities that we do don't activate the calf muscle. So, for example, ellipticals. A lot of people love the ellipticals because they're low impact. Your feet never leave the pedal, so there's very little impact. It may be great for knees, but it doesn't really activate gastrocnemius much. And if the gastrocnemius and the soleus are not being activated, they're going to lose that function. They're going to become weaker and weaker, and that may affect their walking gait because they're not going to be able to toe off as well. So this helps to incorporate the gastrocnemius and the soleus into this exercise that's also working a bunch of other muscles. So great overall exercise. They just go down as far as comfortable in their squat with their medicine ball, and then they're going to stand up and push from the legs in order to throw the ball as far as possible. Great, great exercise. Then we can get into some body weight cardio exercises for your client. Doing some chair squat thrust. exercises, some chair mountain climbers, and these are for some of your more fit individuals, your chair push-ups, your squat jumps, your sit to stand. Again, remember, not all older populations are frail. So a lot of your older adults may be able to do some of these exercises, and this all goes back to your assessment. So your chair squat thrust. Now, the first thing you need to make sure is that you got a good chair. Personally speaking, the chair that's being used in this picture is a folding chair. I really don't like that as an option. I think a nice, stable, other type of chair that doesn't fold up would be safer because you don't want your person to grab too far back on this chair and end up having it fold up and fall over. So a nice, stable chair, of course, you don't want wheels on it. That wouldn't be good. You're going to have your client standing just a few inches away from that chair. They're going to grasp hold, and if a folding chair is all you've got, they need to grab onto the edge, closer a little bit to the edge just so it doesn't fold up. But they're going to grab onto the edge. They're going to hop both feet back at the same time, get into a nice plank position. This plank position should be controlled. It should be good form. If your client can do some of these other exercises that we were already talking about, then they should be okay to do this particular exercise. They can start off doing one leg at a time, then progress into where they're doing both legs at the same time. And then they're going to bring their feet back into this middle position here, and then they're going to stand up. So they repeat this as often as you want. Looking at this chart, you can do it for time, you can do it for repetitions. These are pretty higher intensity type exercises, so the rest may need to be a little bit longer. If you've noticed in the other complexes that we've talked about, the time that they were exercising was a little bit longer than the rest. Well, now we're kind of reversing that a little bit. So play around with this and see what's going to work with your client. Now, the other thing that they can do from the same position is your chair mountain climber and chair push-up. Again, you want to make sure you have the appropriate type chair. So your client is getting into that same position. They need to make sure that they're keeping that nice core alignment. I didn't draw my line very good there with a computer mouse, but they want to keep the core alignment. They want to keep the head in a neutral position. They don't need to be looking up or looking all the way down. They're going to get into that same position that they did with the other exercise, and they can lift one leg up, place it down, lift the opposite leg, or you can lift one leg, do all your repetitions on one leg, and then switch. You can have them hop in between from one leg to the other, or you can incorporate doing the left leg, then switching to the right leg, then both legs back, and then do a push-up, and then switch again. So you can just do the mountain climber without the push-up and progress them to doing the push-up in between the mountain climbers, or you can just do the mountain climbers, let them rest, and then do the chair push-up and let them rest. So again, it just depends on where your client is and what you want your client to do. But this is a nice switch for upper body, lower body, if you do incorporate both into one exercise. And that can get their heart rate up, which can help work on some of their cardiovascular. Do make sure that you watch their form. As they start to get tired, let them go ahead and stop and rest. It's not worth it to push them through an exercise if they're already getting fatigued and losing their form. Your squat jump or heel lift, this is another nice little exercise to help work on bone density, to work on eccentric contractions, making sure that it's appropriate for your client. Of course, if they have some knee problems or back problems, this may not be the ideal thing for them to do. But what you can do is just have your client, if they want to rest their hands behind their ears just to make it a little bit more challenging, they go into a squat position as low as comfortable, and then they lift up, not necessarily in a jump, but they could just lift the heels up. If your client does have some osteoporosis issues, if they have knee problems, back problems, sometimes just lowering the heels and let the heels kind of drop forcefully or slam down to the floor, that's enough to help build up some bone density in your clients. Now, if you have somebody who does have some balance issues, put a chair behind them or put them up near a wall so if they had to let go and felt like they needed to grab the wall, they could. A lot of times when your clients feel that they have balance issues, just knowing that a wall or that the chair is there doesn't necessarily mean that they need to use it, but it does let them feel a little bit more comfortable where they feel like they might be able to challenge themselves. So if you need to put the chair behind them and just have them do a squat, that's fine. Then you can progress them to a squat jump if that's appropriate for them. If you feel that the jump part is not appropriate for your client, then have them squat down, come back up, lift up on the heels, and drop those heels down forcefully to get that bone density working for them, and then have them go back into the squat position. Now, some chair cardio complex exercises. This is something that you can incorporate with a lot of your older adults, whether they're frail, whether they're not frail. I always love teaching chair exercise classes to my older adults or my older adults. Uh, it gave them a sense of accomplishment. And the nice thing with some of these chair exercise classes, you can get very creative. You can add Nerf exercise or squeezing balls. You can add scarves. You can add exercise tubes for a strength training component. It just makes it a really fun, very creative type class. And again, it's appropriate for anyone. You can make it as easy and simple or as hard and complex as you feel that your clients can handle. Again, the time is going to vary, 20 to 60 seconds. Rest, if they need to rest, great, and let them rest. But sometimes if you're trying to work on cardio, maybe they don't need to rest at all. They could just go from one exercise into another. But you can get very creative with your chair exercise classes. Marching with your heel taps. Now, again, keep in mind, you've already warmed your client up, and chances are you've warmed your client up. If you're doing a chair exercise class, you've warmed them up in the chair, and you've warmed them up with some nice marches, some arm swings, just to kind of get everything moving and get some dynamic working, going to get the heart rate up and all that good stuff. Then you can start getting into your more cardiovascular exercises. Now, always, especially with my more frail older adults and those who are new to exercise, they may not be as coordinated as you would like for them to be. Sometimes they think they're doing what you're doing, and you're watching them, looking at them going, not even close. So if you see that the group as a whole is having trouble, you can always just take them back to that marching. Most people can march just fine. Now, when they're in their chair, you need to make sure that they are sitting up away from the back of the chair, that they're engaging the core. I tend to use cues for them, such as, pretend like you're a puppet, you've got a string, and you're pulling that string up to make sure you're sitting nice and tall. So if you start to notice somebody slouching, you can say, oh, hey, so-and-so, pull your string and sit up nice and tall, because we all do that. And, it may be a sign that your people are getting tired, but, sometimes too, it's just that they forget they're getting back into old habits. So you start them off in a marching, making sure that they're sitting up nice and straight, they're swinging their arms, their feet are flat on the floor, and also with your chair exercises, you want to make sure you have appropriate chairs. These are great chairs to use. They're sturdy. They're not going to slip on them. If your chairs have armrests, sometimes they can get in the way, but you can still work with it. And, sometimes the armrest can come in handy for some exercises. But just get them nice and marching, sitting nice and tall. And then you can start adding some different exercises. And in this next picture right here on the right, it looks like they switched both arms and legs at the same time. And you can see this guy looking over like, hey, am I doing this right? What you may want to do is get them to relax their arms. Start with just the heel taps first. So they're just bringing their feet forward, heel taps, heel taps. Once you see that everyone's got the heel taps going, then you can start to reach the arms up. Now, if your clients have some shoulder problems, then you might want to go ahead and automatically give everyone the option to reach the arms forward, or maybe not reach up as high. That's fine. You're going to have different people in your chair class doing different things just based on their abilities. So start with the legs, switch the legs first, get the heel taps going for however long to make sure that everybody's got it down as best as they can, and then start adding the arm movement. So they can reach their arms up. You can use cues such as you're reaching up on a shelf to get something. You're pulling something down from the shelf. You can even, this is where the Nerf balls can come in handy sometimes. You can have them reach up just holding the Nerf ball and then squeeze the Nerf ball as they're pulling their arms back down to mimic that they're grabbing something and bringing it to them. So once they get with this exercise, or they start to get tired because their arms are going to get a little tired first, then you can just bring the arms back down, only do the heel taps, and then go back to the marching if you need to. Once they get their wind back, depending on how fit they are, you can transition them right into the jump rope or jumping jacks. The jump rope, they're marching, so again, you're going back to that marching sequence. Get their legs going, make sure everybody's got it down, and now you're going to add the arm movements as if you're twirling a jump rope. Now, if you have scarves or, usually scarves are fun. The more colorful they are, the more that my little ladies love these scarves, but that helps them twirl to give them a visual. And it's amazing to me, especially with your more frail seniors, what they think that they cannot do. And then you look at them and you realize that they're doing it. And it's usually because they're having fun doing it. It's kind of a fun little game. And the more you relate it to something fun and to a game, then the more likely they're going to try it. So this is a fun activity that you can add in. And like I said, the scarves, you can get lightweight scarves in all kinds of different colors. And they may cost $1 or $2, and you can find them online. And incorporate these into some of your exercises so that they don't feel like they're actually doing an exercise, they're actually having fun with their scarf. The jumping jacks on the right side, you can modify these as necessary. Again, get them to relax after they've done the jump rope exercise. Their legs are already in the marching, so have them continue on with the marching with the legs, and then have them, they can either lift their arms out to the, get them marching, then have them touching their toes or their heels out to the side as if their legs are doing a jumping jack. And the catch here is that you want to make sure it's not just a leg movement where they're internally rotating the knee and then externally rotating at the foot, because that's going to put a lot of pressure on their knee. So let me erase that real quick here. There we go. And so you want to try and keep their knees in alignment with their feet. And that will help decrease the pressure on the knee joint itself. So make sure that it's more of a hip movement with the legs going out to the side, just like you would if you were standing doing a jumping jack. When we stand and do a jumping jack, we don't just move the feet, we move the whole hip. So this is a movement through the hip to get the legs to go apart. Make sure that they've got that down, and then you can add the arm movements. Now, this gentleman is keeping his elbows bent, which is fine. If you remember your levers and your torques, remember your body is a bunch of levers, which is basically the length of your limb. The longer the lever or the longer the limb, the more rotational force you're going to have on a joint. So in this case, the straighter we have the arm, which makes our lever from the shoulder to the hand, the more rotational force you're going to have on the shoulder, which is more torque on the shoulder. If your client has arthritis or shoulder issues, you can lessen the torque on the shoulder, the rotational force on the shoulder, by bending the elbows, because now you've shortened your lever from the shoulder to the hand to the shoulder to the elbow just by bending that elbow. So keep that in mind. Give your clients alternatives during these group exercise classes, especially for a chair class, because your chair class is most likely going to be your more frail adults that are limited in what they can do standing. So if you let people know in general, you can do it this way or you can do it this way. Do what's better for you. Maybe try a couple in the more challenging position, and then when you start to get tired, go to the modified position. But sometimes if you give people permission to modify the exercise, they won't feel as isolated or feel like everybody's staring at them thinking, oh, you can't do this. So it helps them to do what they're supposed to do. Because you know how people can be in groups. They don't want to be different. And sometimes they need to be different because they need to modify. So again, keep the hip movement with the legs, and they can lift the arms up and down just like they would in a jumping jack. They can lift as high as comfortable with their shoulders. They can keep it down low, maybe just lifting the arm out about 45 or 60 degrees and not necessarily all the way up to the shoulders. They can keep the elbows bent. And the cool thing is that they probably already have their scarves in their hand from doing the jump rope exercise. They can add the scarves and make it look nice and pretty with the jumping jacks. You can even have your clients switch their leg position to, relax the arms after doing the jumping jacks, switch the position of the legs to tapping the toes in front, and then swinging the arms in front. Again, with the same modifications with the arms as before, and still using their scarves to make it fun. Now, for standing exercises, and the thing with the cardio portion of a chair exercise class, you can add all kinds of things to the movement. Basically, anything that you do in a standing class, you can also do it seated. You just have to modify a little bit. Try not to change your exercises too quickly. Your younger populations in a group exercise class can change those motions pretty fast, but your older population, the reaction time is a little bit slower. So you may need to do longer repetitions before changing your exercises. And, like we said, change one body part at a time. So either change the arms or change the legs, but don't change both when you go into your transitions. The more fun you can make it, the better. And the more little fun devices that you can add in to make it fun, such as scarves or Nerf exercise balls or anything like that, then the better it's going to be for them. And as crazy as it sounds, the more you relate it to maybe a game that they remember when they were a child or a daily activity, that's going to make it a little bit more fun for them as well. And I'll have some other little tidbits that you can add into the chair exercise classes, because I think the previous exercises that we talked about, a lot of times people are comfortable with those because maybe you do them. It's the older adult exercises that sometimes people have a challenge coming up with some ideas because you're not at that point yet. So getting creative with that might be a challenge for some people. I know it is for me to come up with some fun new exercises for my seniors, even though I'm heading in that direction. So typically with the chair class, you want to incorporate some standing exercises. And again, it may not be appropriate for all of your clients, and we'll talk about how you can modify that for those that need to stay seated. But you can add in, kind of like in a group exercise class, you have the cardio portion, and then you have the toning portion. And your chair exercise class is going to be typically set up the same way. It's just that your class overall may not be an hour. It may be a 45-minute class with 20 minutes of cardio and maybe 15 minutes of standing. And then you've got your warm-up and your cool-down, and then a relaxation at the end, which we'll talk about later. So now getting into some of the standing toning type exercises, and they're not necessarily for toning purposes, but functional purposes. So you have your chair abduction exercise, and this one can be very challenging because it's a kinetic chain of making sure that you're activating certain muscles in certain orders in order to make sure that they maintain their form. Remember that you've got individuals that may have movement issues for a variety of reasons. So they may be compensating in ways that are not very safe for them and modify their form in a bad way. So we want to make sure that we kind of re-educate that kinetic chain a little bit. So you want to have your client stand behind their chair. The key here is not to lean on the chair. And you may have some people who have issues with back problems like spinal stenosis, where leaning forward on that chair actually makes the back feel better. If that's the case, they may need to do these exercises seated first and work on that core strength, and then progress them to where they can do it standing. But the more they lean on the chair, the more they're going to lose their form, and also, too, the more that chair may slide. And if they're depending on that chair for balance and it starts to slide on them, we don't want anybody to fall in the class. So I cue my clients fingertips resting on the back of the chairs. That helps to keep them nice and straight, and it helps to keep the chair in place. Now, with the chair abduction, or the leg abduction, I guess is really a better term, is to have both feet flat on the floor, and what they need to engage first, after their core, they need to engage their glutes. The reason is sometimes people think lifting the leg higher is better, and it's not, because your hip joint can only abduct so far before you start having to lean the body over, and that's starting to compromise your posture and your positioning. So we want them to, I tell them to squeeze the glutes and then lift the leg out to the side, and the key is, and you can see with this person's foot right here, a 15-degree external rotation of the hip is okay, but you don't want people to have their hip rotated so far that the toe is on top. Because now what they're working is hip flexors. We want them to work gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, their TFL, their IT band. We want them to hit those lateral stability, lateral thigh muscles. So we need for them to engage the glutes to keep the hips stabilized so that they cannot lift their leg up too high and start leaning over. So I'll cue them, squeeze the glutes, lift the leg out to the side, keep the toes pointed forward. And usually that will get them into the right position. So have them lift the leg up, have them slowly lower. Sometimes your frail adults will want to just drop their leg back down to the ground. So make sure that they slowly lower. If they need to bring their foot down to the floor to completely rest it, that's fine. As they start to get stronger, especially with the stability leg getting stronger, they may be able to repeat repetitions without having to rest in between by resting their foot on the floor. Now, the knee curls, helping to work the hamstrings a little bit. Your challenge with your seniors is you have to be careful about using resistance, using TheraBands, monster bands, things like that around their feet, because if they have a stability issue while standing, you don't want their feet tangled up and have them fall. So you can actually add some resistance while they're seated in the chair, but have them go through the motions of using their stabilizing leg, keeping their balance. This kind of goes back to being able to walk correctly, because you have to balance on one foot for a period of time while the other leg is swinging through in your walk. So this helps them to work on all of this. And the other thing is, too, is sometimes it's hard for us to understand that this may be easy for us, but it may be challenging for your client. And we're here for the client. We're not here to get our workout. We're here for them to get their workout. So what may be easy to us may be hard for them. So again, making sure that they're in the proper position. You can see that they've got their fingertips resting on their chair. They're standing up nice and straight. And this gentleman's pretty tall, so you know, sometimes it can be challenging to rest the fingertips on the back of the chair without them leaning forward. So chair height, the back of the chair may be an issue as well. But standing up nice and straight, looking forward, and they are trying to keep the knees stabilized. So sometimes I'll try to encourage them, you know, squeeze the knees together a little bit and just bend the knee to lift the heel. And you may want to use cues like you're trying to kick yourself in the rear end. You're trying to lift your heel up as possible. But you want it to be a slow, controlled lift, just like with the abduction. You want it to be a controlled lift and a controlled lowering. You don't want them just slinging their legs around. This is to help them concentrate on these muscles that they're trying to strengthen, not necessarily get the heart rate up. So a nice lift up and then lower the leg. And then if they need to rest the leg on the floor before they lift it again, that's fine. Or if they can bring the leg down and maybe barely let the toes touch the floor before they lift it again, that's fine too. That can be their progression for them. So, and let me go back to this too and kind of go over some other things that you can incorporate. You know, like I said, the chair exercises can be kind of challenging. So there's some other things that you can do with your client that make it fun. And like I said, if you make it a game, sometimes your clients can do a lot more because they're having fun and they don't realize what they're doing while they're mimicking these movements. So I've brought in balloons where I've had the client blow the balloons up. They're colorful balloons so that they can see them very easily. They're slow moving, so as you toss it from one person to the other, it's not going to come at them, like a fastball that could hit them and hurt them or anything like that. So it's a slow-moving balloon, and I'll split the class up into teams and have them pretend like they're playing volleyball. And it's amazing the movements that some of these people can do that you're like, wow, I didn't know you can move like that. Because they're reaching for the balloon, they're trying to make sure that it doesn't land on the floor. They may be doing a side lunge, or they may be doing a front lunge, or they're taking one leg back in order to keep their balance. So these are all things that if you try to get them to do it individually as an exercise, they may think, I can't do that. But you're distracting them a little bit by using the balloon to play a game, and all of a sudden they can do things that maybe they didn't realize they could do. So balloon volleyball is kind of fun. Also with the balloons, I may have my clients get into a circle and they have to pass the balloon to another person, but they can't use their hands. And it's amazing how creative they may get where they'll put it between their knees or between their elbows. They're between their upper arm and the side of their body, and they're getting some really good range of motion exercises going. For their ankles, I may have them sit in a chair and spell their name or write the alphabet with their foot as if they have a pencil between their toes. They can do it in script. They can do it in block letters, and always remind them to make sure they dot their I's and cross their T's, and have them do that with both feet. We talked about using the scarves earlier. And you may have some people that, looking at functional and not just big, large muscles, but some of those smaller muscles in the lower leg and the forearm to help with their grip strength or their toe strength, because sometimes being able to grip with their toes may help them with balance. So I'll have them take the scarf and lay it out flat on their lap, have their hands resting on either leg, and they squish the scarf up. They just wad it up with their fingers, but they keep the hand still. They're just flexing the fingers to roll up that scarf. And they want to make sure that they're getting their thumbs involved because that can be a problem for some individuals. And that helps to work on their forearm muscles, which may be getting weak. And if you, again, going back to what we said earlier, if you ask your clients what they used to be able to do that they're not able to do anymore, one of the things that they may say is, I have to use paper plates to eat because I keep dropping my dishes and breaking, or they're too heavy for me and I'm afraid I'll drop my dishes. Well, they're losing their grip strength, which is in the forearm. So that's a fun little exercise to incorporate with the scarves. They probably aren't going to want to take their shoes and socks off, but if you can get them to do that, and maybe more so one-on-one, you can do the same thing with the scarf by rolling it up with their toes, and that'll help work their lower leg muscles. You can also, with Nerf balls or spongy type balls, you can go to the dollar store. A lot of times I get babies' toys that are little basketballs or baseballs, but they're very squishy. And the nice thing about them is you can throw them in the wash to wash them. But I'll have them squeeze those, maybe as they're doing a bicep curl, and squeeze those balls in order to help work their gripping muscles and help get those finger mobility going. You can also place the balls on the floor and have them push down on them with the ball of their foot like they're pressing a gas pedal as a leg or lower leg exercise. You can have them push down on their heels in order to help work on some more lower leg muscles. You can have them lift up and down on their toes and heels to work the gastrocnemius, the soleus, the anterior tibialis, because these muscles do start to lose their ability to function, and that's going to change their walking gait and make them end up kind of shuffling their feet and not be able to lift their feet up when they swing through. That could cause them to trip and fall. What else? Oh, you can have them toss a ball in class. If this is a new class to you or a new class, maybe somebody new has come into the class or the entire class is new because you just started this program, you can have them toss a ball and try to catch it. And when they toss the ball, they have to call out the person's name. So it allows them to get to know people, but also kind of get some movement going with their upper body. All kinds of fun things that you can do with the exercise, chair exercise classes. You can do musical chairs with your clients. So it gets them up and standing, which is mimicking a squat. They have to walk around in a circle, and you can change the direction of the circle so they're getting both sides evenly, so to speak. And you can play duck, duck, goose, you know, where they tap the person's head and they say duck, 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 and then when they call out the person who's the goose has to try and chase the person around the circle before the original person gets back to their chair. You guys probably played these, you know, as kids. And like I said, sometimes you're older adults, it makes it fun. You know, they're going to try it because it's fun. You can also finish up your classes with a nice relaxation exercise, and that's a nice thing to add. When I taught my chair exercise classes, I always finished up with a relaxation exercise, maybe the last 5 minutes of class. It's a nice way to end the class. Nice way to get everybody's heart rates back down and, you know, all that good stuff. And the challenge, too, is we don't relax enough sometimes. So teaching people how to relax their muscles and how to realize when they're tense, because the more tense a muscle is, the more pressure they're going to have on joints. And if they already have joint issues and joint problems, then, you know, it's just going to make them that much worse. So there's all kinds of things that you can do for your relaxation exercises. You can do progressive relaxations where you tense up a muscle, hold it for a short amount of time, have them release it, then repeat tensing that muscle but with a little bit less tension, maybe 70% of their tension, and then have them release it. And then have them contract it a third time, but this time it's only maybe 20% of their tension. And then usually with that one, when they release and relax, they're fully relaxed. You can start at the head and hit your major muscle groups and work down to the legs, or you can start with the legs and work your way up. Whichever way you want to go, you just want to kind of go in order. So you can start off with the biceps and then get the triceps and then get the chest and maybe have them press their hands together in front of them for the chest. Have them squeeze the abs or tense the abs. Have them tense the quadriceps. Have them tense the hamstrings. You know, then once you've hit all your major muscle groups, have them tense all of them at one time and then relax it. And, you know, make sure they're breathing throughout this process. You can do elevator rides. And I will tell you, with some of the relaxation techniques, there was always somebody in class that had claustrophobia or had a fear of heights or something, and they didn't like it, but the majority of them did. But you can say that they're going up in an elevator. When the elevator doors open, they're in space and they're floating and all their pain is gone, and, you know, concentrate on their breathing. One that was a favorite with my classes was they were at the beach, they were in a hammock. They were filled with sand, and they had little holes underneath them where the sand was just pouring out, and any pain or stress was being released and going through the sand and landing on the beach, and they felt light. And, you know, you can get detailed with it and say, you know, you can hear the palm fronds in the wind, you can hear the waves in the background, and a lot of them really enjoy that because, you know, some of your older adults, they are dealing with stress. They are dealing with social issues. They may not be able to get out as much. They may feel isolated. You know, so they are dealing with stress. It's different stress possibly than young adults, but it's still stress and it still affects the body the same way. So finishing up your classes with a nice relaxation exercise is a great way to end the class. And, you know, like I said, there's all kinds of different stress management, and relaxation techniques that you can incorporate. But, you know, consider doing that as the last 5 minutes of your classes. And, all righty, so this next slide here is how to get your continuing education certificate. So you've completed the webinar. So that's the good part. That's the tough part right there, is listening to me go on and on and on. So if you're near a printer, you want to make sure that your printer is on. you want to log into the Exercise Etc. website. And I believe on the left side of the page, you're going to click on the administration button. And once you click on that, you're going to go to the link for the Webinar on Demand certificates. You're going to complete all the required fields and make sure you have everything written the way that you want to see it on your certificate. Once you're done with that, you're going to click the Submit button. And the good thing is your certificate will appear, and if you're like me and you found a typo and need to go back and fix it, you can go back and do that. If your certificate is the way that you want it to be and you're not near your printer, you can save it and then print it off later. Otherwise, go ahead and print it. Make sure, even if you're saving it, make sure you've completed the form. And, of course, this last part, hopefully you didn't do this at this point in time, but remember that the WebEx program records when you log on and log off. So if you left early, fast-forwarded, ended the class before it was over, then this may result in denial of getting your continuing ed credits, and we don't want that to happen to you. So that is the end of this webinar, and hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some good ideas, and we will be talking to you later.